Let's start the first session of the day titled, A Global Shift to Transform Care Through Accurate Identification and Diagnostic of Kidney Disease. I am pleased to be joined by two outstanding voices in the kidney arena. We're going to get things started with Dr. Robert Starr. Dr. Starr is a director of the Division of Kidney, Urologic, and Hematologic Diseases for the National Institutes of Health, National Institute of Diabetes and Digestive and Kidney Diseases. At the NIH, he is responsible for managing a research portfolio on basic translational and clinical studies of the kidney, urinary tract, and disorders of the blood and blood-forming organs. This division supports research on important health problems, including chronic kidney disease, end-stage renal disease, diabetic neuropathy, and acute kidney injury. Dr. Starr has been an absolutely tremendous advocate for kidney patients at NIH and has been a driving force for the inclusion of patients in the NIH-funded Kidney Precision Medicine Project. For those watching around the world, and I understand we're at over 100 countries now, Dr. Starr is a United States civil servant. He serves our nation with great distinction and is a recipient of AAKP's National Public Service Award. Please welcome to the podium Dr. Starr. I'll turn things over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ed, for those very kind words. And good morning, everyone. I'm really glad for the opportunity to be here and talk about how NIH feeds into the AAKP projects of Decade of the Kidney and pushing patient-centered and what I'll talk about a more precision approach to promoting kidney health. I particularly want to thank AAKP and many of the patients involved in AAKP for being part of our studies and, more importantly, for pushing us forward to not accept the status quo and to create the future that we want, and that's what this talk is about. Now, I've included two slides to tweak both Richard and Ed as well as Paul. This one is for Richard and Ed. And in innovation, which is what we're talking about, is quite hard and difficult, and the innovators in the audience know how hard it is to create an innovative project or product. But that's only actually the easy part of it. The harder part is that you have to create your own market. And as we've learned in working for the AAKP, that you can speed this up by talking to potential users of your project to make sure you get it right. But one of the things that Clayton Christensen talked about, who wrote The Innovator's Dilemma, is that you have to talk to the users of your future project or product and not people who are using products right now, because they will give you the wrong message. Now for Paul, the title of the meeting is If Not Us, Who, and If Not Now, When. I'm pretty sure that this is, shall we say, reused or repurposed from Rabbi Hillel's statement in Ethics of the Fathers or Ethics of the Ancestors, if I'm not for myself, who is for me, and if not now, when. But Paul, you left out the middle piece, which is when I am only for myself, what am I? And the reason I bring this up is that yesterday we had a really beautiful talk by Andrew Lowe from MIT who talked about that middle piece, that we really need to be creating a portfolio of projects and working together to de-risk projects. So I think that middle part of the quote needed to be included. Okay, so now on to the talk. So the mission of NIH, which is the nation's premier biomedical research agency, is to support the discovery of new knowledge, of what I'll be calling new science throughout this talk, but critically to make sure that this knowledge is translated into practice to improve health and reduce illness and disability. What I wanted to today is update you on a couple of projects. I only have time to do a small handful of projects, and I've mapped them onto our kind of standard bench to bedside or clinical to basic science paradigm, and the projects that I'll be talking about are shown here, and I've picked a few that span the spectrum of what we do. I want to start, because of AAKP's interest in renal transplantation, with our two transplant projects. But before I start, I want to remind us, really, that what patients want to know are four things. What do I have? what's going to happen to me, what can I do about it, and what does it mean for my family? This roughly maps to the medical terms diagnosis, prognosis, treatment, and genetics. And the reason I put this in the forefront is that we've learned over the last decade or more that we need to focus on these four things, and we include patients, including AAKP patients, in all of our projects to make sure that we focus on these issues. We always start here and remain here. So the first project is called Apollo, which is understanding the gene APOL1 and how it relates to kidney transplantation. Now, many of you know that kidney failure is about threefold more common in Black Americans than in white Americans, mostly because of variations in the APOL1 gene, which in Africa was important for preventing African sleeping sickness, but in the rest of the world, it causes kidney problems. If you transplant kidneys from donors who have one of the APOL, or have two APOL1 variants, they're more likely to fail in the short term. The risk follows the kidney. However, the potential long-term outcomes in the recipients of APOL1 positive kidneys, as well as in kidney donors who have APOL1 genes, remain unclear. So the purpose of the Apollo study is to understand the effects of variations in APOL1 on the risk of kidney transplant failure in the recipients as well as in the donors. And the idea behind this is to inform allocation policies for deceased donor kidney transplantation and potentially change something called the KDRE score. And the second part is to create a cohort of African Americans living kidney donors to study the longer-term effects in them. This study is fully recruited, and the results should be out in about a year and a half. We need to follow the patients before we can talk about the results, obviously. And again, patients from AAKP have been intimately involved in this study from day one. The second study in renal transplantation is called STEPS. This comes from Ebony Boulware at Duke, where her question was, can you use a culturally sensitive way of teaching people about kidney transplantation to increase the rates of kidney transplantation, particularly in African American patients with kidney disease, because of all the disparities that are well known to this group. So the STEPS intervention is to identify people early, to then have a social worker reach out to them and educate them and address any needs that they have that may be getting in the way of getting on a waiting list or having a kidney transplant, and then directing them to the transplant coordinator who will help them through each of the many difficult steps in the evaluation for kidney transplant. And the goal here is to improve the rates of being on the transplant list, completing the transplant evaluations, as well as increasing equity in kidney transplantation. So this study is about 3/4 recruited, and again, results will be available in about a year and a half. The next project is one that we're really proud about, whoops, let's go back. There are, as this group knows, there are substantial evidence for kidney health disparities in chronic kidney disease. This is a map of my hometown, Chicago, which shows in red where the highest incidence of chronic kidney disease is. No surprise, it's in the inner city. The Gold Coast, shown in green with the low rates of kidney disease, is on the shores of Lake Michigan. So this is from a paper just published this month in JASN, but this is a well-known phenomenon. Now, there's a lot of research on the epidemiology of sort of why these disparities exist, but very few studies have been done to look at the structural drivers of how they happened. So what we wanted to do was to move beyond the epidemiology of this problem to actually do clinical trials that test novel, mostly community-engaged interventions that are set up to dismantle or mitigate the effects of structural racism on kidney disease. And we have now, in the process, in the next couple of weeks, we'll fund 5 studies that look at various promising novel interventions that range from culturally and linguistically concurrent community health workers, health coaches, social support services, racially concordant care teams, as well as natural language processing to identify patients early. So this is a really, really exciting initiative and is part of the NIDDK's mission to work on health disparities and improve health equity. The next thing is a workshop that, again, many AAK patients took part in, which was on the subject of post-dialysis fatigue. Now, I think it's well known to the patients in the audience and worldwide who are on dialysis that about half of patients on dialysis experience debilitating fatigue in the minutes to hours after getting off dialysis. And while the patients know a lot about this, the clinicians have basically swept it under the rug, and it really is a quite profound unmet need because it limits the daily activity. And we heard yesterday that the point of dialysis was not to limit your daily activities, but to promote them. So what came about in this meeting was the need to create a proper group of evidence that will allow us scientifically to help patients with post-dialysis fatigue improve their health and possibly return to work. And I think the really important issues that came out in this meeting, we need to work with patients directly, of course, and I want to shout out to Dawn Edwards and Paul Conway and all the AAK patients who filled out a sort of flash survey that really helped us understand the problem and continues to help us in our discussions with FDA and especially CMS. We are looking at the survey results with CMS right now. So the next steps for this are under discussion, but we are really interested in this topic and want to move quickly. We don't want this to take 10 years. Now, there's a lot of talk yesterday, and you'll hear some more talks today about an artificial kidney. What I want to talk about is an actual harder project, which is to try and create a biologic kidney for transplantation, to engineer a biologic kidney for those who need them. This is a blue sky regenerative medicine long shot on goal project. It was all the way, I think, on the right side of one of the slides yesterday. And this group, which we've called Rebuilding a Kidney Project, uses regenerative medicine to try and solve two problems. The first is to build a biologic replacement kidney, essentially from scratch, from kidney cells, using regenerative medicine techniques. And the second was to rebuild damaged kidneys to restore failing kidney function. And the consortia started in the first couple of years trying to figure out what cell types they needed to do this. That's what the figure shows, to find the right kidney cell types and begin to integrate them into the complex structures that form the kidney. In the process of doing this, we discovered that there were several rather profound engineering challenges that are mostly plumbing, which is how do you get the blood into the organ, how do you get it out, and how do you connect this regenerated kidney to a ureter to allow the urine to flow outside the body. So what I want to do on this slide is show a couple of the advances of this very productive consortium. And again, this started in 2015, so about 8 years ago. So in the builder group that's trying to build functional kidney tissue for transplantation, they've used advanced bioengineering techniques, including bioprinting, shown here, organoids also, to build the beginnings of new kidneys. And the exciting part is that they're beginning to solve the plumbing problems of getting the vasculature to surround the kidney cells so that there's flowing blood into the organ, and beginning to understand how you connect the kidney tubules to a nascent ureter. That work's being done in fruit flies. So this is a blue sky project. We need to understand the science of how to do this, and this is why it will take some time. We're well aware of that. The second part, the rebuilders, who are trying to regenerate damaged kidneys to restore function, have done a good job of understanding our scientific basis for how cells get injured and why some of them don't repair. They undergo something called maladaptive repair. And they're beginning to work on the signals for pushing cells away from maladaptive repair towards adaptive repair. I'm going to call this new biology in the rest of the talk. Now going forward, what we would like to do, and this is a concept only that we've presented to NIDDK Advisory Council as well as the director of NIDDK. We do not have funding for this yet, but the concept It turns out to be very similar to what Dr. Lowe talked about yesterday, which was to combine the various puzzle pieces, best brains, and de-risk this long shot by combining projects and people together. So the idea is to create a Thinkubator, a technology hub and incubator for the kidney, so-called Think, and use this a Shark Tank-like approach to identify groundbreaking new projects in regenerative medicine that will help move the field forward. The second part, which we learned in RBK, was not to start too big, but to start with the smaller engineering problems one at a time and assemble teams to work on these 5 or 6 problems shown here that are basically plumbing, which cells, the interstitial cells that people don't talk about, biomaterials, how to get the blood in and out, and maturation, to have teams work on these individual projects. But the important part is to combine them together into the incubator. As someone said yesterday, lock up the best scientists into a room and throw away the key for a while. So that's the idea behind this project, to put the multiple groups together to make components to solve this puzzle. We're very excited about it and hope that it does receive funding. In the remaining part of my talk, I'd like to focus on the Kidney Precision Medicine Project and how we plan to transition this into a kidney precision clinical trial effort, and we hired Deb Gibson to promote this latter effort. I will start with what people, as we understand, do not want with chronic kidney disease. What you don't want is to be put on the wrong medicine for 2 years, and it takes a year or two for your doctor to figure out whether you're on the right medicine or not, and then maybe get put on a second medicine, and if that doesn't work, a third medicine, and maybe a fourth medicine. And the problem is, while this is happening, your kidneys are getting more and more damaged. So this is not what we want. And the reason for the problem, we think, is that that gray box, which shows CKD as sort of one disease, is not true. That CKD is actually several subtypes, each with its own distinct biology, and what we need to do is figure that out. So this need for kidney precision is actually hiding in plain sight. When we go back and look at all of the medications that were nicely outlined yesterday, the ACE and ARBs and mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists and SGLT2 inhibitors, all of these drugs work well, but they only work in about a quarter to half of the people who are put on them. What that means, and that's the green line bar, what that means is that they don't work in something like 3/4 to half the people who are put on them. That's the red bar. And what we'd really like to be able to do is to predict who should be on which drug. What drug should you be put on that conforms to your biology, your biologic type of chronic kidney disease. So this brings in a precision medicine approach that patients want to be on the right drug from the start. I mean, the mantra is right drug, right person, right time, but what we need in CKD, because of the long time course of the disease, is to be put on the right drug at the very beginning. How do you do that? Well, again, take the general population with chronic kidney disease, use the KPMP science that I'll talk about in the next couple of slides to find these 4 subtypes that have distinct biologies of disease, have patients undergo a bunch of lab tests to figure out what their subtype is, and then be put on the right drug. The patients with blue subtype get the blue drug, and hopefully then have success, which is kidney health and cardiovascular health. Patients with the red subtype get put on the red drug, et cetera, et cetera. So this is where we would like to head. So how do we get there? The Kidney Precision Medicine Project, or KPMP, was formed to understand human kidney diseases, plural, to improve treatment. The idea here is to start with kidney tissue. So KPMP has done about 240 biopsies so far. These are research biopsies, altruistic biopsies, from people who are donating tissue to the project and not expecting to learn themselves what it's going to tell them about their own kidney, but it will help the community at large. To obtain these research kidney biopsies from participants with common forms of acute and chronic kidney diseases. Step 2, have them undergo exquisite testing to interrogate the biopsies, to define those subgroups, those 4 colors that I showed on the previous slide. This will then allow additional folks to come in and figure out the disease pathways, look for new drug targets, and develop new therapies. All of the data is put into an open source kidney atlas, kidney tissue atlas that I'll talk about. And the idea here is to improve the pipeline of drugs, of treatments for our patients. This will also increase the science in kidney research, and we hope bring more researchers into the field. One example on this slide is what we'll call next generation pathology using spatial imaging. So this slide shows routine histology done right now of a patient with really bad chronic kidney disease. The blue areas are a lot of fibrosis. One idea would be to use a non-destructive kind of imaging where you don't really touch the issue at all. You just use light to look for autofluorescence, and that alone can tell you what you're looking at, what the various parts of the kidney are, that to the untrained eye, or even that first H&E section that I showed, you can't really tell where you are. But with autofluorescence imaging, you can tell exactly where you are. And then subject the kidney to a more advanced technique called imaging mass spectrometry, which can tell you what the kidney cells are thinking, what proteins are expressed in the cells. So we're going on the left-hand side, old-style patterns of injury, fibrosis, to right side, biology of injury, what pathways are involved in that particular patient. This will allow assessment of new targets. So this is the new biology needed for precision medicine, and the kidney tissue atlas integrates data from all of the KPMP methods shown here. Some are RNA, some are proteins, some are lipids, et cetera, and stacks them all together. This is open source data. It is available now. You're not waiting for somebody to publish something. As soon as the data has been validated, it is put into the portal. And there's separate portals set up for students, for clinicians, for researchers, and for the general public, and for participants. So if you're at all interested, please go in and poke around a little bit. There are training videos to help you, and if you need help, there's a link to get help to figure out how to use it. And we're beginning to see the renal research community use this now all the time in their abstracts at scientific meetings. This is really exciting early data. So what makes KPMP unique, and it is really unique across all of NIH, there are many, many atlases around NIH, including some rather large ones sponsored by the Cancer Institute. But what makes KPMP unique is that we're addressing the big public health problems, not rare kidney diseases that lead to end-stage kidney disease. The entire community is included. We have AAKP patients, participants on all of our boards. They were Richard Knight was at the original meeting. They've written papers. They wrote the IRB, the informed consent document. They've done a bunch of publications. So they really are equitable partners with an active voice in the entire enterprise. And frankly, what they form a really important piece. They push the project forward and keep it on track. The culture of the project is to promote the priorities and safety of patients first. The participants are our heroes. They're the ones that have donated a small piece or pieces of their kidney for research. And the scientists have spent a lot of time focusing on data quality. This has the best quality data of any NIH atlas, and it's open to the public. And I've talked about the new imaging methods, et cetera. Now, precision medicine can be done alone. A drug company could do this one drug at a time. You would need to screen huge numbers of patients to find the ones that have the blue phenotype, that have the blue biology, and then they would be put on the blue targeted therapy and presumably get a good response. The FDA requires that you also look at some patients who are do not have the blue physiology. But here's the problem. For each drug company, each study that they want to do, they have to not only understand the science and build the test biomarkers, but they have to build their own clinical trial infrastructure. They have to find, consent, and enroll a large number of patients. They need to screen everyone. They're enrolling only a very small proportion of patients into the drug trial. What that means is that the patients who are screened out, which is the vast, vast majority, really get nothing out of this. So this is a going alone is a difficult, costly, and inefficient and low-yield way, and patients may wonder, well, why would I want to do this if my chance of me getting onto a clinical trial is actually quite small? So taking what Dr. Lowe talked about yesterday was how do we gain efficiency? How do we de-risk this? So one way is to match participants to multiple drugs at once. So again, take the large unformed CKD population, use KPMP science to divide it into the biology-driven key subgroups, use the lab tests generated by both NIH and pharma research to create a molecular kidney board similar to the tumor boards that are in all hospitals across the United States to figure out what therapy each particular patient should be on. They're given basically a scorecard and then sent into the individual trials, some NIH funded, some maybe NIH funded for repurposed drugs. And the idea here would be to success, meaning better kidney function, kidney health, cardiovascular health. So is this possible? Well, there are a lot of needs. I've outlined the science needs that are shown here. We also need to work with our colleagues at FDA and talk to them early and often, as well as Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, CMS, to work on coverage and payment issues. And we need lots of feedback. So is this difficult? Yes. Jonathan Himmelparr talked about hope versus reality. So we think there's reality here, but it's not going to be easy. It's possible. It's complicated. It is possible. It is timely. But what is the alternative? The alternative is to keep doing what we've been doing, which is working sort of okay, but not great. So by working together, we think we can actually make this better. And so how do we nurture this? How do we de-risk this next generation of CKD treatments and therapies? Well, NIH investments in a bunch of cohort studies, as well as the KPMP Kidney Precision Medicine Project Science, are beginning to clarify the new science and some of the biomarkers that are needed to do this work. We've also trained a number of people in clinical research and clinical trial design. We have, and with your help, a strong patient voice to move forward to promote breakthroughs in kidney health. Industry seems to be committed now on kidney disease more than we've seen in the past. That's good. KPMP's open science and data sharing of human biopsy data really does make this possible. Everyone can use it, including the pharma and biotech. Having early discussions with FDA and CMS are really important. One thing that I've done over the last year and a half is set up a CMS NIH consultation service where a CMS can ask us questions about things that they need, and we can ask them questions about particular clinical trials that we're in the process of setting up. And we've already begun to have these kinds of discussions with them about precision medicine in kidney disease. So we think it's important to bring all of the federal partners to the table in some kind of pre-competitive space. And working together, we can reach further, faster, more robust. And we, again, try and do this for all kidney patients, not just the couple of % that might be enrolled in any individual study. What we need. So the reason I'm here is because we need you. We need you, the AAKP patients, to be our partners, to be the champions of this, and frankly, to be the change agents for this to happen at all levels. And we're working hard on it. As I've said, we hired Dr. Deborah Gibson, who has extensive expertise in this area already, to work on the clinical trial aspect of this. The KPMP project is something like 200 investigators working on it. So it really does take a village to do these kinds of things. And we're looking forward to moving and nurturing kidney disease and kidney patients in the future. And I want to thank you and thank the members of AAKP for helping us along this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Starr, for those tremendous remarks, and I can assure you that AAKP is up to the challenge of being change agents. Thank you for also sharing the very important work of the NIDDK. Next, it's my honor to welcome AAKP Ambassador and kidney transplant recipient Carl Juresic. Mr. Juresic is an Australian-British kidney transplant recipient experienced in working on some of the world's biggest brands such as Apple, Uber, Dove on brand strategy, communications, and the latest in technology and innovation. Driven by his passion for helping fellow kidney patients live a better quality of life, he joined the AAKP Ambassador initiative as one of the organization's international ambassadors to find out new and innovative ways that he could help the kidney community. Mr. Juresic is joining us from Australia, so please turn your attention to the screen for his remarks.
Hi, Ed. Thanks for the introduction. I'm coming from you from sunny Australia, actually. I'm down in Canberra, where it's our version of Capitol Hill. And I'm actually a patient down here. I'm international ambassador of AAKP, but coming here today as the CEO and founder of Kidney Ally, and wanting to thank the AAKP and the GW University for the opportunity to really come here today and talk about something that I'm super passionate about. As a fellow patient, I'm all about advocacy and learning. Like, information is power. And that's really the birth of the business that I've started called Kidney Ally. Kidney Ally is all about empowering patients to slow down the progression of CKD. As soon as you get diagnosed with CKD, all you really want to do is understand how to slow it down. Just like other diseases that are around there, like diabetes that are manageable, we want people with kidney disease to be manageable and with CKD. And one of the biggest challenges I've seen out there for patients is their diet. And I'm going to give you a bit more of a lowdown of what Kidney Ally does. Kidney Ally really is all about slowing the progression of CKD by empowering patients with personalized food choices. And we got to this insight by actually starting a community on Facebook. And now it's kind of one of the biggest communities on Facebook for people with kidney disease. It's called Kidney Disease Diet and Recipe Tips. We started it about a year ago, 2 years ago. Me and my co-founder Ruth, who's a renal dietitian, and what we really found from that was that patients were flooding in every day. There's about 20,000 patients, 10,000 amazing Americans kind of in that group every day, contributing recipes, helping other patients learn about how they can slow down the progression of CKD. So from that, that's really where the business idea came for Kidney Ally. And me and Ruth were working over the past year and a half to build a website that offered a personalized diet course, which was the main thing that people were really after, just to really understand how they can slow down kidney disease, because every patient is totally different in what they need to eat to help slow that down. It's one of the biggest myths that's out there for kidney disease. And what we've learned is that's really our first milestone, so a big first flag in the sand for patients to help us slow that down, that course. But what patients are really after now, from what we're hearing in the group and the community we have, is they want one app to do it all. So that's really where we're moving to next with Kidney Ally. We're really excited. We're part of one of the biggest Southeast Asian accelerators called MedTech Actuator. And I'm on that at the moment, learning so much from doctors, clinicians, fellow founders on ideas that they have and helping improve the ideas we have around helping the CKD community. So we're aiming to hopefully launch this app later this year, and it will include awesome things for patients where they can learn similar things we've got with the current kidney diet course that people can get to online, which is fully kind of tailored and made through AI, but also with clinicians. It's really important we bring clinicians on the way to making sure that what we're learning is valid, but also want to make the apps be fun. We want to make it useful, handy, easy to use. So whether you're cooking for your family or a loved one or you're a carer, that we're really thinking about making ease and simplicity around everything we do so we can help patients slow the progression of CKD. So look out for that app later this year. Check out the Facebook group if you're not part of it. It's a really amazing community, really well monitored. We make sure that everything in there is really safe for patients. And if you haven't, check out the website, kidneyally.com. Love to entertain any conversations anyone has. We're currently capital fundraising as a part of the MedTech Accelerator, and welcome any feedback as well or any other ideas for the app that should be in there as we continue to build along with the community. It's an absolute pleasure to be part of this today. I'm a very proud member of the kidney community, and always open to conversations about helping kidney patients. Here's to the decade of the kidney, and have a lovely day, guys. Thanks again for the invitation to speak.
Thank you very much to our panelists, Dr. Starr and Mr. Juresic. We have a few minutes left within this session, so I'd like to open it up to questions from our in-person audience, and I'd like to remind everyone to direct their questions to our speaker on the stage.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for putting this session together, and I really appreciate the information that we've all received. I have a question for Dr. Starr. The new projects that you're considering, or you're actually starting and moving ahead, really are sounding very, very exciting. But do you think it would be possible for NIDDK to perhaps make a commitment, or at least consider a commitment to embed at least one NIDDK staff to participate in each one of those projects sort of as a full-time participant, and even have that NIH staff member be linked to at least one, perhaps AAKP or other patient organization patient, so that the two of them would be joining into any of the scientific research projects, monitoring it, and giving input from both the patient's perspective as well as the NIH perspective?
The answer is yes, and we're doing that already. All of the projects I talked about are, quote, research initiatives, meaning that kidney urology, hematology, my staff are intimately involved. All of them have at least two people, so-called project scientist, project officer, involved. The kidney precision medicine has, I don't know, about 8 people or so from my staff involved in it, trying to help the investigators keep it on track. All of these studies are run by a steering committee that actually makes all the decisions, and we, from NIH rules, have a single vote. But we are intimately involved in these projects. In terms of patients, all of them either have patients involved in them already. KPMP is the one example, and Apollo also. The Rebuild the Kidney project had a patient come to its last steering committee, somebody from AAKP, to begin to have the discussion. So even the basic consortia, we're now beginning to include patients in them for all the reasons that I talked about and you're talking about. So the answer is yes, and we're doing it.
Thank you. Great to hear.
I have a question, Dr. Starr. Are you more optimistic for patients now than you were 10 years ago? And if so, why?
The answer is yes. This idea behind the Kidney Precision Medicine Project has been incubating for a couple of decades. And one of the things that we were waiting for, that I was waiting for in particular, was for the science to get to the point where the science was good enough, the techniques, the tools were good enough to be able to look a patient straight in the eye and say, we'd like to do an altruistic kidney biopsy, which has risks to it, including a tiny risk of death, and that is in the consent form. And be able to say that we now think that we can use your donated kidney tissue well to understand what's going on. And the science flipped about 8 to 10 years ago. So that's what the change was that enabled this project. It's been in the works, been thinking about it for a while. I gave a talk on something related to this almost 2 decades ago. But the science wasn't quite there. But now we know it's there. And the various advisory boards that oversee the Kidney Precision Medicine Project have insisted on data quality and robustness. And the group, over the course of a couple of years, built into everything that they do a tremendous quality assurance program that just is not present in other studies. If you do detailed look at the data in the KPMP Atlas, and you have to know what to look for, it's mitochondrial DNA, but if you look for what are markers of, we'll call badness, bad data, the KPMP has the cleanest data of any atlas out there.
Hi there, Dr. Starr. In practical terms, how does patient involvement help NIH tell the story of patient engagement when officials are talking on the Hill?
Let me talk in general, then see if I can circle back to the actual question. We started involving patients seriously in our study about 8 or 10 years ago. And the only thing I can say, and I give this talk all the time, is that it's so important that patients tell us what to do and what not to do. The best example is a study called COPE-AKI where we had a scientific workshop about, let's say, 5 years ago. And I thought going into that workshop that we're going to end up looking at various drugs that would prevent fibrosis after acute kidney injury. And, we were looking at patients who were hospitalized with acute kidney injury, and what kinds of interventions would we test afterwards. And we invited a couple patients to the scientific workshop to give talks on what they thought, and we listened to their stories, and we realized that no. Before you do pharmacology, you need to do good medicine. You need to know that the patients who have AKI end up with good medical care upon discharge, because that's not what's happening. We heard stories of patients who had AKI, had been in the hospital for months, in the ICU for months, and basically dropped into a dialysis unit, a chronic dialysis unit, with no medical records, no follow-up. And we knew that this wasn't just a single instance of bad medicine. So the COPE-AKI study was now shifted from a drug study to a basket of interventions that includes having the patients before they leave the hospital, see a nurse navigator, get set up for visits by a pharmacist, virtual pharmacy visit to their home to empty out their medicine chest from drugs that are harmful to their kidneys, to have nephrology appointments set up, et cetera, and have a nurse watch them weekly or so, every couple of weeks, so that it became what looked like what ought to be good just medical care, but that's the purpose of the study, is to see whether really, really good medical care is needed in our patients. Everybody knows what we think the answer will be, but it's important to find out. So why is this important, and why does this help you in your messaging? I think to the Hill is it's important for the legislators to understand that we have involved this patient voice at the very beginning. It's not like we designed a study and then asked them, okay, what do you think about this study? They're there before the design phase. That's how important we think this is. And I think the message to Hill is, this is how we get through the best science. We do the science that asks the critical questions that need answers.
Thank you.
Did I answer the question?
You did.
Yes.
And that sort of segues into a question that I have is, how you mentioned working with KHI on that study. How generally do you work with KHI? Could you describe that?
So the last study was AAKP. Sorry if I said the KHI. So, okay. we work with both we work with everyone. Okay, we work with everyone. I'm in terms of kidney. So this is the Kidney Health Initiative, which is a joining of the ASN, American Society of Nephrology, and the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. I am personally on the board of directors and involved in all three subgroups: drugs, biologics, and devices. So I'm heavily involved in Kidney Health Initiative, and I'm actually giving a version of this talk in September at their annual meeting.
Thank you.
I am a patient on dialysis. I had a kidney in 2011, and it kind of like died in 2022. But they gave me an okay kidney because the creatinine was fluctuating up and down, so they had to change the medication. I was up here asking, is it possible that I could be a part of the test? And also, what type of insurance do you take? Because I found out that insurance is a big factor in transplantation.
So yes, insurance is a big factor in the United States. So these are all the studies that I talked about are medical research. So NIH is paying for all of the research pieces of it. Could you be involved? That's a discussion we have to have privately. But the KPMP is set up, Kidney Precision Medicine Project inclusion and exclusion criteria are set up to be about as broad as you could imagine.
All right.
Meaning to include everyone. But that said, we're not at the moment doing it on patients with kidney transplant for a whole different set of issues. You could envision a project like this for kidney transplantation.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the work that you do with CMS and the coordination that's required in your job?
Wow.
Briefly. Briefly.
So I co-lead a group called the Evidence Generation Working Group that is part of the NIH CMS Joint Leadership Council. So evidence to CMS means clinical trial evidence. There's a separate group called data that's more USRDS kind of data. But so we meet with them, and what we try and do are work out ways for the agencies to collaborate so that we can help CMS get the best scientific and clinical advice that they need, and they can come to us. They can come to us, and then we can go to them and say, we have trials that we want to do and want to make sure that if we do them properly, that you will that use them for funding decisions. And we quickly find out that there are all sorts of arcane rules in CMS that no one knew about or that have changed recently. And it's really important to have these kinds of discussions, as Murray has said, have them often, or early, often, and frequent, and continuing. Because the rules change all the time. So having this ability to consult between NIH and between the two agencies along evidence, along clinical trial results and clinical trial design is really important. We've taken trials to CMS and said, we're designing this clinical trial, do you like the endpoint? Because I thought they wouldn't, they actually did. We then asked them, well, could you actually pay for the intervention? And I thought they could. And they said, no, we can't, but maybe we can turn it into an innovation model through the Innovation Center, CMMI it's called, and pay for that. So again, this is an example of your government agencies trying to work together to help you.
Dr. Sheldon again from FDA. As you mentioned that, I'm just curious as to how your organization, and perhaps just your division alone, as opposed to the entire NIH, is interacting with CMS right now in the attempt to introduce the new TSET model, transitional coverage for emerging technology. This has gone through a problem the last few years. They put out the MSET, and then they had to repeal that, and now TSET is coming back into the picture, and I think that would be an ideal mechanism. It's linked to our FDA Device Center's breakthrough device designations, and it would seem that most of these projects would be, in fact, a breakthrough, qualify for FDA, and perhaps that might help create better funding.
Let's have those discussions offline. I'm not surprised there are parts of CMS I don't know about. We stumble upon this all the time. We've actually one of the things we're trying to set up at NIH now is called literally CMS 101. It's having 3 or 4 lectures from CMS or former CMS people to NIH staff to understand what CMS does. But let's talk afterwards. I have been involved in a couple of mostly vascular technologies where CMS has asked us what's the science behind them, and we've brought together a bunch of experts in the field to help them understand particular artificial heart valve kinds of devices. But yeah, let's talk, Murray, afterwards. And
you got it.
Do you know if those discussions would be open to the public, or a version of that would be open
I doubt it.
Okay. No, I understand. So I'm the chair of the Veterans Health Initiative, AAKP, and I'm on the executive committee of a couple of studies with the VA on that we're implementing over the next couple of years. And how does your group interact with the Veterans Administration and their role in kidney care?
We talk to them quite a bit. We've worked together on a couple of projects. They will be coming to fairly soon to a meeting we're putting together, as will AAKP. to talk about the science in kidney disease and then sort of how to best educate Congress as to where the kidney community science is and what's needed moving forward. We've been to their innovation meetings. We've involved them in our innovation projects. So we try and keep these, fairly
So you're
close.
on a unified track?
We try. We try. Yeah, we try.
That's wonderful.
And Dr. Starr, can you share with us a bit about how NIH works with global research partners?
Okay. So actually the the Rebuilding a Kidney project does have at least one or two investigators from Australia. So there are ways to have international researchers in our projects. It does become a bit complicated, which is why it's important, if you're thinking about trying to do something like this, to talk to us, as Dr. Sheldon would say, early and often. Some of the new rules on data sharing may make things even harder to do right now. So again, these are kind of delicate discussions that need to happen around a particular project. And we're glad to have these kinds of discussions. Just to put it out there, I've been saying this for the last 10 years at least, we invite people to send us short 1 or 2 page proposals, particularly if you're thinking of doing some kind of clinical trial or clinical study. Send us a short synopsis of it, not the whole grant. We cannot look at the whole grant ahead of time. We're not allowed to. But we can look at a short synopsis, include a budget. We will discuss it at our kidney working group and get back to you within a couple weeks, both about the scientific content of it. Is it us or does it belong somewhere else in NIH? About the scientific content, and give you some idea of how to apply, because there are a couple, particularly for clinical studies, there are different pathways, and it gets a little complicated to know which way to go forward. And again, we're here to help, and if you ask those kinds of questions early, we can get you on the right track early.
All right, well, thank you for your fantastic work, Dr. Starr. You're a tremendous public servant, and the kidney community greatly appreciates your efforts on our behalf.
Thank you, and I really appreciate working with you, Ed, with the rest of AAKP, and all the patients out there that have filled out the surveys and really helped us move the science forward. We could not do it without you.
Well, wonderful.
Thank you.
So thank you again to our session speakers. This was an excellent and inspiring session.